Notice Chris Byrd was not born in Texas. He was born in England, lived there for his first 24 years, but his early love of shooting was shadowed by the UK's onerous laws preventing the use of guns in self-defense. When he moved to the US and married a Texan, everything changed. He is the author of The Concealed Handgun Manual, which is now in its 6th edition, and Thank God I Had a Gun, True Accounts of Self-Defense, now in its 2nd edition. And his latest book is Surviving a Mass Killer Rampage, When Seconds Count, Police Are Still Minutes Away. He has written articles for SWAT Magazine, Concealed Carry Magazine, and The Gun Mag, and has been a featured instructor on Conceal and Carry School, a 12-part series shown on Spike TV. Chris is certified in Texas as a concealed handgun instructor and is trained under some of the best-known instructors in armed self-defense in the country. He is a frequent panelist at the annual Gun Rights Policy Conference and has been a speaker at Texas Southern University, the Alamo Gun Collectors Association, and many others. Chris is a past president of the Texas Concealed Handgun Association, a member of the Texas State Rifle Association, the NRA, and Gun Owners of America. In 2014, he was presented with a Defender of Liberty Award by the Second Amendment Foundation. His key insight is that if you are solely relying on law enforcement to protect you, even though they can be very effective, this is not sufficient in our current society. People must be proactive to do their part to protect themselves and their loved ones. Chris's mission is to make people responsible for their own safety. With that, I'll introduce Chris Byrd.
Well, I guess as soon as I start talking, you'll know that I'm not from Texas, but I did get here as soon as I could. I still have difficulty making obscene and anonymous phone calls. Everybody knows who's calling. I grew up during World War II. I can remember just. We lived in a two-story frame house called Quarry Cottage on the edge of an outfit that repaired farm machinery. And I can remember tanks going down the road in front of me. And also, whenever the siren went off, I had to run home and hide under the kitchen table. But I've always been interested in shooting. I guess I grew up on a diet of TV westerns. So after I'd spent 3 years in the Royal Military Police, I migrated to Canada, and I worked as a cowboy and was doing quite a lot of shooting, whether I was supposed to or not. And I finally found somebody. I became a journalist, and in Vancouver, I found a Texan who lusted after the sailboat that I had, and I wanted a way to get to Texas. So we got married in Texas, and I have lived here longer than I've lived anywhere else in the world. I take very seriously the Second Amendment because I didn't have it. And I think an awful lot of people in this country, even in this state, rather take it for granted. And being able to put on a gun in the morning and take it off at night is a right that I cherish. I couldn't do that in England. Couldn't do that in Germany, where I was stationed. Couldn't do it in Canada, really, but or Australia, for that matter. I lived there. But at the moment, we seem to be getting an influx of these mass shootings, and they're going from disenchanted students to terrorists. And let's take the example of San Bernardino. San Bernardino, there was a Christmas party. One of the employees happened to be a radicalized Muslim. He and his wife decided to shoot the place up. They did. They killed 14 people and wounded another 20 odd. And the first officer on the scene was a lieutenant who was going for lunch. And he got there, and he waited. He said he thought that the shooting was still going on, but he waited 2 minutes for 3 other officers to arrive. By the time they went in, it was all over. The perpetrators had escaped. Those who were going to be shot were shot. And so he waited too long. Now, I'm sure he was probably agreeing with his agency's protocol. Wait until you've got an entry team, he called it. But nowadays, more and more police departments and particularly sheriff's departments are going to first officer on the scene goes right in. And this dates back quite a few years. We started off the modern, I guess, mass shooting plague, if you like, with UT Austin, the shooter in the tower. And as a result of that, SWAT teams were created largely on the basis of what had happened there. Police departments realized that they couldn't rely on a revolver or even a shotgun to bring a mass shooting like that to a timely end. So we have SWAT teams, and then we had Columbine, where they discovered that SWAT teams were not the answer. SWAT teams, in that particular case, we had 2 perpetrators, and they did all their killing in the first 10 minutes. It took 45 minutes before an ad hoc SWAT team of Jefferson County deputies, Denver PD officers actually went in. And of course it was all over and the perpetrators had killed themselves. So waiting for the SWAT team was not the answer. I talked to a guy who does the ALICE program, which I'll explain a bit about later. He was a SWAT team member out of Richardson, I think. No, Richmond Hills, I think it is. It's a suburb of Fort Worth, anyway. And as a result of talking to his wife about Columbine, she was a principal at a local elementary school. And he said, if something like Columbine happens, what are you going to do? And she said, well, we're all going to huddle in the corner and wait for you guys. And he figured that that was not the answer. So he started the ALICE program, which is what I call the unarmed response. And ALICE stands for Alert, Lockdown, Inform, Counter, and Evacuate, not necessarily in that order. And there are various things that you can do, throwing things at people, swarming them to stop the killing. But it's far better if you have a gun to hand. As a result of Columbine, they went to this 4-person entry team. That was the latest. And as we saw in San Bernardino and also Sandy Hook, that didn't work. It took too long. So a lot of instructors have been teaching for as long as a decade. First officer on the scene goes in. But even then, they're not going to be able to save everybody. I was at the Gun Rights Policy Conference in September in Tampa, Florida, and we were talked to by a sheriff from nearby, Wayne Ivey. He was sheriff of Brevard County, which is very close to Orlando. And he said, we get an active shooter call, and we're going to respond at Mach 2 with our hair on fire. But we're going to arrive too late. And so the best thing I can do for my residents is to teach them how to save themselves and maybe take out the bad guy until we can get there. And so he put together an 8-hour program which resulted in a Florida concealed carry license. And this was in September. He said that program, which is every Saturday, it started 1 day a month and now it's 4 days a month. He said it's booked up for a year. And I think that is, he came out and said as a result of San Bernardino, he encouraged his residents to get licensed to carry and to fight back. Another sheriff who did the same thing was Paul Van Blockham, sheriff of Ulster County in New York. And he put on his Facebook page, if you have a concealed handgun license, please carry. And he received, this went viral, as you might expect, and he received some praise, but he also received some flack, notably from Bill Bratton, who at the time was the commissioner of the New York City Police. And so his answer when he was talking to me was, Bill Bratton doesn't have opinions. His opinion is whatever the mayor says it is. And in a lot of cases that's true. You've got a big city, you've got a police department, and the police department, the police chief has to pander to the mayor and the city council and the city manager. Whereas sheriffs get elected by the people. And that means that they're going to maybe be a little more friendly to citizens carrying guns. Generally speaking, I found that to be true. They're also more helpful when I'm doing my research. I guess the thing that Wayne Ivey had told me was that he was near the Pulse nightclub in Orlando shooting, and so he went and offered support. And he said, we have been teaching our residents to run, hide, fight. And they hid in the bathrooms. Not a good place. Only one entrance, only one exit. And 49 of them died as a result. So he says, now, I'm not teaching them run, hide, fight. Although that is what a lot of even federal agencies like Homeland Security are recommending, run, hide, fight. So he is teaching arm yourself, the 4 A's, arm yourself, awareness, situational awareness, damn, what are the other two? I haven't, I guess I was taking a leaf out of Rick Perry's book. Can't remember which federal agencies to close, right? Awareness, avoidance, and the last one is attack. And so that's changed things a little. It was interesting, I noted a couple of years ago that Kathy Lanier, who at the time was the chief of police of the Washington Metropolitan Police Department, she was interviewed on 60 Minutes, and she said, we have been telling our residents, don't get involved, call 911, don't fight back, give them what they want. Now we're telling them, run, hide, fight. And she says, this is a whole different ballgame. So the next day, Fox News pointed out that Kathy Lanier was responsible for approving the concealed carry permits in Washington, D.C. She had turned down 80% of the applicants. So I would say that her hypocritical slip was showing. And she's no longer the police chief. I don't know whether that had anything to do with it. But one of the problems that we have with mass killers, whether they are terrorists or whether they're disenchanted students who may have been bullied or whatever, or whether they're just plain nuts, is gun-free zones. Gun-free zones aren't. In the same way in the military, friendly fire isn't, gun-free zones aren't. They are only free of ordinary citizens with the best method of defending themselves. In other words, concealed handguns. And we have them all over the place. Every state has a list of places where even if you're licensed, you've gone through the process, You haven't got a criminal record. You're a good citizen, but they don't trust you to go into a whole bunch of places like bars and courthouses in some cases, and I've attempted to fight this but without any success. A lot of small counties have, not small necessarily in an area, they have the courthouse and the city government in the same building. And so you're kept out. They have the 30-odd 6 signs, they have the 30-odd 7 signs. You're not allowed to go in. And of course, this is the place where you're going to get trouble. Now, realistically, I think it's very, very unlikely that any one of us here is going to be involved in a mass shooting. But if we are, it's as well to be prepared. Going back to the 4 A's of Wayne Ivey, the second one is awareness. Situational awareness is maybe the most important one, because if you keep your eyes open and you analyze what you see, then the chances are that you may be able to avoid the whole thing. If you go into a restaurant, do you know where all the exits are? Is that the first thing that you check? Do you get your back to the wall? My wife now has been trained. She takes the seat with her back to the room, and I take my seat with my back to the wall. Remembering Wild Bill Hickok, who didn't do that and was killed as a result. And so you need to know the way out. If somebody comes in with a gun and starts shooting, what are you going to do? Well, certainly if you're with your family, you want to get out. If you have the training and the inclination, you may want to stop it. And if you're armed and you've got a gun, preferably not a 25 caliber mouse gun, then you stand a good chance of being able to stop it, because these people, they want as long as time as possible to do their killing and to rack up a large butcher's bill, if you like, and until the police arrive. Once the police arrive, it's over. A lot of them commit suicide, but they want unarmed victims up until to that point. Mostly they're going to work on their own, but with terrorists, you're more likely to find 2 people. Like the Garland attack, 2 people. The San Bernardino attack, 2 people. So it's becoming more frequent. So one of the things you have to do is you have to watch for the other one. And the chances are the person will be on their own, but not necessarily. And it's really bad. I guess you've all heard now that when you've finished shooting somebody, you scan. You break that tunnel vision. You scan, you're looking for the other bad guys. You're looking behind you, because there may well be somebody else there. And you also need to take into account the fact that I'm getting old. I lost my train of thought, but never mind. The awareness, situational awareness, will keep you out of a lot of trouble. The attack, and if you're in the same room as the bad guy, you don't have much choice. If you can run, but unfortunately, too many, school classrooms only have one door, like the restroom, just the one door. And once you're in there, you've either got to do something about it. And the Alice program is good in that respect. The guy who was teaching it, he taught me, I was able to take a 2-day instructor's course on Alice. And the guy who took it said, when my son was 6, I took him into the principal's office. And I told the principal, I have given my son permission to do whatever he has to do, break a window, break a door, whatever, but to get out if he hears shooting. And the principal says, you can't do that. They have been told from when they first became teachers, you are responsible for every one of those kids from the time he or she gets on the bus in the morning to the time they step off the bus in the afternoon. So you need to know where they are all the time. And this guy said, I can replace your window. I cannot replace my son. And a lot of police officers are teaching their kids, if you hear something like that, run, get out of there. You may not be that successful in fighting back, particularly if you're, a preteen or something like that. Somebody like the Sandy Hook victims were all 6 and 7 years old, except for the 6 staff members. And they're not likely to be able to do too much about it. However, there was a case that really started being used as the example, because a lot of people said, well, you won't get students to charge the bad guy. It won't happen. Well, it did happen. It happened in Springfield, Oregon. A kid by the name of Jake Riker, it was his 17th birthday. And he was in the cafeteria with all his friends, awaiting the beginning of classes. And they went and the bad guy there had a cut-down rifle. And he started shooting people. Jake didn't realize he'd already been hit in the lungs. It was a .22 that was being shot at him. And so he got up and he ran at this guy. Now, he's over 6 feet. He was a wrestler. And knocked the guy down. And the guy pulls out a Glock from his waistband. The rifle went flying. And was able to overcome him. But because he led the charge, other students followed. And they all piled onto him. He told me afterwards, they had to pull us off that guy when the police arrived. So yes, it can work. And one of the exercises that we did on this Alice program was bad guy role playing. Comes in, he's got a blue gun, and he's going to shoot everybody. Well, a couple of the guys had soft rubber balls about that big and started throwing them at the guy's head. What does he do? His reaction is to protect his head. The gun is pointing at the ceiling. And if you follow that up with a charge, it gives you a much better chance of survival than just waiting to, like they did at all except one, like they did at Virginia Tech. They were under their desks waiting to be shot, and a lot of them were. There was one kid there who was an Air Force cadet who tried to charge the the bad guy, and he got within a few feet of it. He was shot about 8 times, all in the front, and he was the only one who really tried to fight back. The teacher who had been in a Nazi concentration camp during the war, he was able to get his students, he held the door while they all jumped out of the window. It was a second floor window. And he was able to get almost all of them out. I think 1 or 2 got shot, wounded. He was killed, unfortunately, but he did the right thing. He was responsible for his students, and he tried to protect them. Now, as far as these books are concerned, I started writing in the 90s when I was a reporter for the Express News in San Antonio. And I tried writing some novels, the great mystery novel or something like like that. Didn't have much success with that, so my wife said, well, why don't you write about something you know about? And that resulted in the first edition of the Concealed Handgun Manual, which was about half as thick as the 6th edition, which is what's on the table there. And I tried to start off each chapter with a story, a true story, about that was relevant to the chapter heading. And as a result, the feedback I got was, oh, we really like those actual stories. So I put together 17 of those, and that resulted in Thank God I Had a Gun. The first chapter of the last edition of the Concealed Handgun Manual was the chapter was about mass killing, and I thought, as this is becoming more frequent, it deserves a whole book on its own. So that's the most recent one. I've been here before, and you didn't throw me out, I guess. But anyway, those books are available. You get a deal today. Normally, the Concealed Handgun Manual is $24.95. Thank God I Had a Gun is $19.95, and Surviving a Mass Killer Rampage is $22.95. A $20 bill will get any of those, and I will pay the tax. So you get a deal. And thank you for having me. Any questions? Thank you.
Let me give you
Good speaker. Hey, did you watch the bank thing?
I didn't get a ticket. I didn't have the tickets out there.
Well, if I lose, you can have this one.
Our first prize this evening is a donation. Michael, you said you donated? Mike handed them to us. Still not sure exactly who they came from,